You break the rules, you go to prison. You break the prison rules, you go to Alcatraz prison. Now, everyone in this room has somewhat been affected by justice, whether it's a severe problem, a traffic violation, or even just being grounded by your parents. As you can see, Alcatraz Island is a small island just about a mile and a half outside of San Francisco, where justice was served in this federal prison from 1934 until 1963. Today I'm going to be discussing with you the history of Alcatraz Island, two of the escape attempts, and some of the most cruel criminals ever come through Alcatraz. Now, over the last 100 years, this island has been changed and formed in many ways. But first, let me tell you about the discovery of the island. According to the article, The Rock in Alcatraz History, in 1775, a Spanish explorer named Juan Mal de Ala discovered Alcatraz. He then sold it to the U.S. government in 1849 for military and lighthouse purposes. As explained by the History Channel, the U.S. started realizing how great of a spot this was for a prison. And at that time, cell houses were being built for a maximum of 300 prisoners. It wasn't until 1934 until Alcatraz became a federal penitentiary for some of the most cruel criminals. Now, the cold Pacific waters and the hazardous currents amongst its perimeters made this island a great spot for prisoners, and it was tough to escape from. However, even a prison like this can't always be secured from these criminals. Now let me go into detail more about the two escape attempts. The first one was in June of 1962 when Clarence Anglin, John Anglin, and Frank Morris tried escaping from Alcatraz. This was known as the Great Escape. Frank Morris, the one on the far right, was the mastermind behind all this. He was the one that started with digging through his cell using just a kitchen spoon and a broken backing. Once he had the hole planned out, the three men one night came through the hole, escaped through a vent up 30 feet up to the roof, and down a 50-foot pole to the shoreline. Now, to make sure that their tracks weren't traced, the three of them all made paper mache heads and glued hair from the barbershop onto their heads and covered the blanket over them so the guards wouldn't notice. Once they're at the shoreline, there was 50 raincoats stitched together, and it was used as a raft. Now, this was the last time any of them were seen again. However, many think they died at sea, but an article from the New York Post believes they escaped to Brazil. The other attempt, on July 31st, 1945, was when John Giles, an Alcatraz inmate, tried escaping. According to Catherine Babbicks from ABC News, John Giles worked on a loading dock when a shipment came in full of Army uniforms. At this time, Giles thought this would be the best chance to escape, and so he disguised himself by wearing one of the uniforms and hopping onto the ship. However, within minutes, guards knew that he was missing, and the ship ended up going to Angel Island instead, and correctional officers were waiting for him. Now that I described to you two prison attempts, let me go into detail about some of the most famous criminals ever come through Alcatraz. The first one was the famous Al Capone. Al Capone earned a lot of his wealth in prostitution and bootlegging, and after 5 years of investigation, he was convicted and sentenced to Atlanta prison. However, at Atlanta, he was being bribed and he was receiving stuff that no other prisoners were getting, such as carpet and a radio. So it wasn't until 1934 when an unexpected transfer sent him on a railroad car all the way across the country to Alcatraz. Once he arrived there, privileges were not given to Al Capone. Warden Johnson didn't believe in that. He believed in that Al Capone should be equal to everyone else. Capone spent 4.5 years in Alcatraz before being transferred. Another dangerous man was Machine Gun Kelly. Explained by an editor from Bio, Kelly was a bootlegger, bank robber, and a kidnapper. He was arrested when he kidnapped a wealthy businessman, and that's when he was sentenced to life in prison in 1933. He arrived at Alcatraz on September 4th, 1934. Now, Alcatraz prison became one of America's most interesting prisons of all time. For almost 30 years, this brought American history, mysterious escapes, and some of the most deadly criminals of all time.